Hello, I'm Ben. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to talk about resumes. I have hired quite a few people in my lifetime, and the resume is the first piece that sets folks apart, right? So you're going to go online, you're going to apply to a resume. If that company is doing what is appropriate, they're going to take the right fit for the job. They're going to interview people a little above and a little below that expectation, and they're going to do what they can to find the best options to best support their team and to best take care of their customers. So what can you do on your resume to make it stand out? We're going to go through 5 different examples and of what you should do and should make sure your resume includes. One, I think a resume should be 1 to 2 pages tops. I don't think you should go much more than 2 pages. The resume is the piece that gets you the interview, right? It's the piece that makes them ask questions to call you in and think, hey, this person has these relevant skills. Looking at the resume, they think that those skills meet the need, so they call you in, and that's the point when you give them the rest of the descriptive information about your work history and what you know, and that's when you give them the opportunity to ask those questions around doing so. So let's go through the 5 things that resumes must have. Now, outside of making sure you don't have mistakes on the resume and your correct updated contact information, there's tons of layouts and formats on the web, so go ahead and look into that. What's the best suggestion around that? But what we're talking about is we're talking about quality content. So you'll start out number 1, do you know how to present yourself and your background? So for example, you may have worked for one employee for very many years, but you may have migrated through roles inside of that employer. As an employee, you may have migrated through several different roles, and each one of those roles took on greater responsibilities. Those responsibilities is what you should be able to talk to. And in the role you're applying to, you should be able to take your background and tie that to the expectations in the current role. That's a big piece of it. You've got to show relevance to what you've done and how that will support what you're now trying to do. Okay? Do you know how to present yourself and your background? So when you're practicing that, make sure you're practicing answering questions around how the relevance between your existing history, how that ties into the need that is there, and what you expect that to do for the new employer. Customize your resume for a company and the function that you are trying to get. So for example, if you've been in sales for many, many years and you're trying to get a leadership or management role, when you put your resume forward, under those sales positions, if you've trained new sales folks, if you supervise new sales folks, if you covered the sales folks area while you were helping recruit, train, and put someone else in that area, those are all leadership roles that you've done in that job. Those things are what you want to highlight in the new role that you're trying to get. And in that interview process, you want to take the opportunity to have 4 or 5 speaking points where you can say, hey, yes, I was a sales rep, but in the rep role, this is what I did. And from a leadership standpoint, this is the success that came from it. So if you helped recruit somebody, train somebody, and then they lasted for multiple years and got a President's Club award or something like that on their own, but you helped get them in the spot so they could do that successfully and grow on their own, that's fantastic leadership. So that's what you want to be able to highlight. So number 2 is customize your resume for the company and the function that you plan to serve. Number 3 is, are you smart? Are you smart? And what I mean by that is, are you conscientious and professional? And if you are conscientious and professional, you want to make sure your resume speaks to those items. I have not moved people to a second interview in the past because they were too petty about a previous employer. It's very simple. You're going to have bad bosses. You're going to have bad employers. How you respond to that is what matters, right? 10% of what we do in life is what actually happened. 90% is how we respond to it. That's not a modern quote, right? That quote's nearly 2,000 years old. You want to make sure you respond appropriately. You want your resume to be conscientious and professional. So when you had an obstacle like that, call it out if you want to, and put in there how you got around it and how you support teammates get around it to better serve your customers. That's extremely key on your resume. You don't want your resume talking about, well, this was a bad boss, this was a bad situation, this was toxic, so I decided to leave. You want to say how you successfully navigated those waters, and then you want to say when you decided to leave, you wanted to give yourself more opportunities for growth. It's exactly the same thing. It's conscientious and it's professional. So are you smart? What you put down there is going to tell folks, hey, they're not smart enough to get through this. It's going to speak to, your emotional intelligence quotient. You want that to be a positive picture. You don't want it to look petty. Number 4, does your career history make sense? Does your career history make sense? So as a hiring manager, what people are going to look at is there a continuous movement through this person's career that show that they grew, that they expanded, that they stuck to what they were trying to do? Does it make sense? In leadership, for example, your resume could be all over the place. You could have started at a Pizza Hut, and then after you ran a crew of 10, maybe you then applied at a Walmart. And after you ran a crew of 14 for a few years, then maybe you applied to a law firm where you wanted to be a leader over, legal attorneys or legal attorney assistants, etc. The point is, even though those are vastly different jobs, the career improvement, the career history makes sense because it shows that you've been migrating to an opportunity that was greater for you to have a larger leadership impact. That's what you want your resume to look like. You don't want to have a career history that's everywhere. And over here you were doing underwater basket weaving, and over there you were training, Shetland ponies. You want to have it where there is some tie-in, and it's not saying that you might have ran the underwater basket weaving business and you may have done sales for that, and then maybe you sold Shetland ponies. And if that's the case, you can get some very random things that are still in line in a progressional standpoint. So just make sure you take the time to make sure your history shows that pattern and shows how that line makes sense. That's number 4. Does your career history make sense? And number 5 is the ultimate question everyone needs to ask themselves. In today's market where everything is online and you just apply, you have to ask yourself, can you do this job? Okay, the last thing you want to have happen, and I've heard Richard Branson and other people say, well, if I can't fake it till you make it. And that's probably bad advice, okay? If you don't have some understanding of the role you're going into, and day one you're well behind those that would be your subordinates, that's not going to go well. Most people can spread their breadth a little bit and can widen their horizons a great deal, from the beginning. But the understanding and the process assimilation, the process support should be there, right? So can you do this job? What makes you think you can? Those are the things you should be speaking to in the interview process. And if you do believe you can do the job and the interview process goes through and it seems like it should and you get the gig, then hey, throw down, get after it, and do the best you can. So that is the 5 top questions I think your resume should answer. And being a former hiring manager that's hired thousands at this point, if you keep that clear, you have a positive attitude, you answer the questions, as politely and courteously as you can, show that professionalism, don't show pettiness at all, you should be able to put yourself in a very, very good position. So those questions are, do you know how to present yourself and your background? Can you customize your resume for company and the function of the job you're going after? Are you smart? Talking about professionalism and those considerations. 4, does your career history make sense? Does your resume read in a way that it shows it makes sense? And then last, can you do this job? I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it's useful to you. If you know other folks that may be able to use this, that may have the instant impact with, or they're currently looking for a job right now, please send them to this video so they can get this insight, and maybe it will be useful to them and help them on their search. I hope you've enjoyed it. Be good.